A cancelled order for snow boots. Imagine his astonishment, therefore, when on arrival, a whole week earlier than promised, with his order loaded on wagons, he was met by the overseer, who greeted him in an angry voice. "The pilot has changed his mind about the order, so you'd better get back home with them, and the quicker the better." When Chaim Shimon began protesting and asked the reason for such unwarranted treatment, the overseer lost his temper completely and began raging against Chaim Shimon and Jews in general. He was now absolutely convinced that the overseer was at the root of the trouble, and for some personal reason of his own. So he again reiterated that he must see the parrots and speak to him personally. The infuriated overseer again began screaming at him, "How dare you question my word, you low-down Jew! If I say that the pirates has cancelled the order, then that will have to be sufficient for you. I'll soon put a stop to your questions." Saying which, he grabbed hold of a gun and was going to shoot Chaim Shimon. Fortunately, however, the two carriers who had brought the wagon of Volikas jumped at Jan Bednitsky and caught at his arm, stopping him just in time to save Chaim Shimon from being shot. Chaim Shimon saw that further argument was useless, so he had no alternative but to take his wagon load and depart. He did not, however, go straight home, but stopped at a nearby village to think the matter over and see in which way he could at least prove himself in the right with Stefan Verbitsky, the nobleman, who must undoubtedly have had his mind poisoned against Chaim Shimon and his wares. Meanwhile, word got around that the latter had bought Volikas for all the workers of the pirates, but that despite the fact that Chaim Shimon had brought them before the date promised, the order had nevertheless been refused by the unscrupulous Jan Bednitsky. The weather had by now become really cold and nasty, and many of the workers were laid up with heavy colds, probably due to their not yet having the Volikas and other warm clothing they so urgently needed for their protection against such weather. The news therefore angered them, and they began to murmur their protest against the overseer's incomprehensible behavior. The grumbling soon reached the nobleman's castle, and all his servants went about their tasks, discussing the matter of the cancelled Volikas and shrugging their shoulders in bewilderment. Verbitsky, had he not been lying in a drunken stupor, would surely have heard what was going on, but it was not until he awoke to comparative sobriety that he was aware of his old servant, who was his personal attendant, going about talking to himself and wagging his head in perplexity. "I don't understand it," the old valet was murmuring. "Why should Chaim's Volikas have been refused when they are so badly wanted? It beats me." "What are you saying?" roared Verbitsky. "Call that dog here at once," meaning Bednitsky, whom he always referred to as a dog. Thus he called all those employed on his estate, "and tell him to bring the Jew along with him." The old servant took to his heels, fearing that in his rage the pirates would treat him to a beating with his whip, which he had tasted on more than one occasion. The pirates was accustomed to regarding himself as an overlord, with power over his workers and their families, which could not be questioned or disputed by anyone. On many occasions he would call together all his workers with their households, and have them all assembled in front of his castle. He would then seat himself on a raised dais, with a scepter in his hand, and survey them all with a penetrating gaze. Heaven help the one upon whom his eyes settled, for he would, for no apparent reason, choose someone at random and order him to be whipped before the eyes of the whole gathering. Then the unfortunate creature was ordered to crawl on all fours and kiss the tips of the nobleman's boots, while the onlookers had to sing a song of praise to him, their pirates. This he did to demonstrate his limitless power over them, and naturally enough, they all went in fear and trembling of him and his crazy impulses. This nobleman, Stefan Verbitsky, liked to call himself Stefan Velmozhiny Almighty, and when he appeared in public, he always had a band of his workers blowing the trumpets to herald the approach of their lord and master. The pomp and ceremony pleased his vanity and made a great impression, he felt, upon his subservient employees. The old valet came running to the overseer Jan Bednitsky and told him that the pirates had ordered him to go at once to find Chaim Shimon and bring him back immediately with his Volikas.